The screen in front of me was frozen on a timestamp. 11:42 p.m., March 3rd. That's when I saw her, my own sister, walking into my office in the dark, glancing over her shoulder twice before sitting down at my desk and opening my laptop. "Keep watching," said Robert Whitfield, CEO of Whitfield Marketing Group, sliding a tablet across his desk toward me. His voice was calm, too calm for what was on that screen. I watched my sister Devin plug a flash drive into my computer. I watched her scroll through folders I had spent 4 months building. I watched her copy a file called final_pitch_deck_mc.pptx and rename it on her own drive 30 seconds later. My stomach dropped. I'm Maya Chen. I'm 29 years old. I've worked at Whitfield Marketing Group in Atlanta for 6 years, the last 3 as a senior brand strategist. I built campaigns from nothing. I stayed late so often that the night security guard, a man named Curtis, used to leave my coffee mug by the elevator because he knew I'd forget it. My sister Devin is 26. She joined the company 18 months ago. My company, the one I'd already spent 4 years building a reputation at, because I helped her get the interview. I told myself that was generous. I didn't realize yet what it would cost me. Growing up, Devin was always the one my parents introduced first. At every dinner, every holiday, every family group chat, it was, "Devin got engaged. Devin bought a condo. Devin's manager loves her." I learned early that competing for their attention was a losing game, so I stopped playing. I built my own life instead. My own apartment in Midtown, my own savings account with $41,000 in it, the result of 6 years of careful budgeting, and a 401k I never touched. I thought that was enough. I thought results would eventually speak for themselves. In January, our division VP announced an opening, Director of Brand Strategy. Base salary $130,000, up from my $94,000. I had the metrics. I had 3 campaigns that beat projected ROI by double digits. I spent 4 months building the pitch deck that would make my case. Research, client testimonials, projected revenue models, all of it. On March 4th, I walked into the conference room at 9:47 a.m., expecting my final review meeting. Instead, I found Devin standing at the head of the table, my slides, my exact charts, my exact client quotes, restructured with her name in the header pulled up on the projector. "Devin's promotion to director was unanimous," our VP said. "This deck made it an easy decision." I sat there in silence. My hands went cold first, then my whole chest. That night, at our parents' house, there was a cake. Devin's name was written on it in blue icing. My mother hugged her for almost a full minute. My father raised his glass and said the words I will never forget. "Finally, one of my daughters knows how to make something of herself." Nobody asked where I'd been for the last 4 months. I smiled. I ate the cake. I said congratulations. But I also remembered something small, something that didn't fit. Devin had asked me back in February what software I used to track client engagement metrics. At the time, I thought nothing of it. I went home that night, opened my laptop, and pulled up the shared drive. My original pitch deck file was gone. Deleted. Last modified March 3rd, 11:43 p.m. That was the moment I knew this wasn't a coincidence. I closed the laptop. I didn't cry. I made a decision instead. I wasn't going to be passive. I was going to start paying attention to everything. I didn't say a word to anyone for 11 days. I went to work. I trained 2 new hires. I sat through a meeting where Devin presented her Q2 strategy using a slide format I had personally designed 2 years earlier, down to the exact shade of navy blue I'd picked for the header bars. I clapped when everyone else clapped, but every night, after I got home to my apartment on Peachtree Street, I opened a notebook. Not my laptop, a physical notebook. The kind with no cloud backup, no sync, nothing Devin or anyone else could ever access remotely. I wrote down dates, times, names, exact wording of things people said. March 4th, 9:47 a.m. VP announces Devin's promotion. Deck shown on projector matches mine exactly, including a typo I never fixed in the Riverside Foods slide. March 9th. Devin asks me in front of 2 coworkers, "Didn't you used to work on Riverside Foods too?" Like she'd never seen the account before. I wasn't being paranoid. I was building a timeline. The first real break came from Priya Nair, a data analyst 2 desks down from mine who I'd worked with on 3 campaigns. Priya had no reason to lie to me, and even less reason to get involved in a family mess. But on a Tuesday afternoon, over coffee in the break room, she mentioned something offhand. "Weird thing," she said. "Building security pinged me last week about a badge anomaly. Someone used your badge number to access the 4th floor at 11:40 p.m. on a night you weren't even in the building. I figured it was a system glitch." I went still. "Did you report it?" I asked. "I flagged it to facilities. They said they'd look into it." She shrugged. "Probably nothing." It wasn't nothing. My badge. Devin's known habit of borrowing things, my charger, my conference room bookings, my badge from my desk drawer when hers wasn't working. I'd let it happen for years because it felt small. It never felt small again after that conversation. That night I called my grandfather, Walter Chen, the only person in my family who never once compared me to Devin. Pop had spent 35 years running his own accounting firm before he retired, and he had a way of asking exactly the right question. "Have you talked to facilities yourself? Pulled your own badge log?" he asked. "Employees can usually request their own access history. It's your data, Maya. They have to give it to you." I hadn't known that. I requested it the next morning through HR's internal portal, framing it as a routine security check on my own account. 3 business days later, the report landed in my inbox. My badge had been used to access the 4th floor at 11:40 p.m. on March 3rd. I was at my apartment that night. I had a delivery receipt from Nguyen's Kitchen at 8:52 p.m. and a Lyft receipt showing I never left my building after that. I had proof someone else used my access to get into my own workspace the night my pitch deck disappeared. I sat at my kitchen table with the badge log open on one screen and my notebook open beside it. And for the first time since the cake, since the toast, since 6 years of being the daughter nobody mentioned first, I felt something other than hurt. I felt calm, focused, almost steady. I wasn't going to confront Devin yet. I wasn't going to confront my parents either. I was going to get every piece of this documented so cleanly that nobody could talk their way around it. Not Devin, not HR, not even my own mother. What I didn't know yet was that the badge log was the smallest part of what I was about to find. The badge log was a single thread. I pulled on it, and the whole sweater came apart. I started with version history. Whitfield's shared drive kept old file revisions going back 2 years, something most people never bothered checking because nobody thought they'd need to. I went back through every major campaign I'd led since I started as senior strategist. The Riverside Foods rebrand, the Atlanta Public Library sponsorship deal, the Coleman and Pratt retail launch. All 3 had been presented by Devin at some point over the last 18 months. All 3 showed the exact same pattern in their version history. My name on the early drafts, file ownership quietly transferred. Devin's name on the final version submitted to leadership. I sat at my kitchen table at 1:14 a.m., doing the math on my own performance bonuses. Whitfield pays a 2% campaign bonus to the strategist of record on any deal that exceeds projected ROI by 10% or more. Riverside Foods alone beat projections by 22%. Coleman and Pratt brought in $1.8 million in new annual billing. Devon had collected roughly $61,000 in performance bonuses over 18 months for work that was, in whole or in part, mine. I thought that was the worst of it. I was wrong. 3 days later, my old iPad, one I hadn't touched since I upgraded phones 2 years ago, lit up on my kitchen counter with a string of text messages. My father had set up one shared Apple ID for the whole family back in 2019, for Find My iPhone, in case anyone gets lost. Nobody had ever turned off message forwarding. For 2 years, it had been sitting in a drawer, silently mirroring everything sent to that account. I almost didn't look. Then I saw my mother's name in the thread. Devon. She's at her cousin's baby shower until at least 10. Perfect timing. Mom. Good. Make sure you save it under a new file name this time. Last time, IT almost flagged the metadata. Devon. I know. You worry too much. Mom. I just want this to go smoothly for you, baby. You deserve this promotion more than anyone. I read it 4 times. Then I read it again. My mother knew. Not suspected, knew, in detail, with enough specificity to coach Devon on covering her tracks. She knew about file metadata. She knew about timing my schedule around it. This wasn't a daughter looking the other way for her favorite child. This was active participation. I thought about every dinner, every toast, every time my mother said, "I'm so proud of you, Devon," while I sat 2 feet away holding a glass of water I suddenly couldn't drink. I called my grandfather at 7 a.m. the next morning, my hands shaking for the first time through this whole process. Pop, I need you to tell me I'm reading this right, I said, and read him the messages. There was a long silence on the line. My grandfather had been married to my mother's sister for 40 years before she passed. He knew this family better than almost anyone outside of it. Your mother has spent your whole life keeping score for Devon, he finally said. I think some part of her believes if Devon succeeds, it reflects on her as a mother. I don't think she ever thought about what it cost you. That doesn't make it right, Maya. It makes it worse. He paused. You need a lawyer. Not for your parents, for Whitfield. What's happening at that company is fraud, and fraud has paperwork. Paperwork can be proven. I sat with that for a long moment. 2 years of stolen work. $61,000 in bonuses that should have been mine. A mother who hadn't just allowed it, she'd helped plan it. And somewhere in that thread, one more line I hadn't let myself fully process yet. Mom, once she's director, we just need her quiet for a few more months. Then none of this matters anymore. A few more months until what? I didn't know yet. But I was about to find out exactly what my mother and my sister were planning next, and it had nothing to do with a promotion at all. The lawyer's office was on the 9th floor of a building on Peachtree, 3 blocks from my own. Her name was Elena Vasquez, and a former coworker had told me once, half joking, if Elena takes your case, the other side should just settle now and save everyone the embarrassment. I sat across from her with a folder 2 inches thick, badge logs, version history printouts, a spreadsheet of bonus discrepancies totaling $61,400, and separately, printed but not yet explained, the text thread from the shared iCloud account. Elena read through everything without saying a word for almost 10 minutes. This is civil fraud and unjust enrichment at minimum, she said finally. Your sister knowingly took credit for and was financially compensated for work that wasn't hers. The badge log alone shows unauthorized access to your workstation. That's not a family dispute. That's a paper trail. What about the texts? I asked. Those don't go in a filing against Whitfield, but they tell me everything about your mother's state of mind, and they tell me you need to be careful. She tapped the last line I'd shown her. Once she's director, we just need her quiet for a few more months. Someone is planning something. I'd find out what before you make a single move. I found out 2 weeks later, almost by accident. Priya, still unaware of most of what I was carrying, mentioned in passing that restructuring memos were circulating ahead of the fiscal year. Brand strategy was being streamlined. One senior strategist role was being eliminated for redundancy. Mine. I sat in my car in the parking garage for 20 minutes after I heard that. Quiet for a few more months didn't mean waiting for things to calm down. It meant waiting until Devon's promotion was locked in, so that when my position disappeared, it would look like ordinary corporate restructuring instead of what it actually was. Elena didn't blink when I told her. Now we move, she said. We file an internal complaint with HR today, with everything except the family texts, and I send a preservation letter to Whitfield's general counsel this afternoon. Once they're on notice, that restructuring memo becomes evidence, not paperwork. The complaint went in on a Tuesday. By Thursday, HR had frozen the restructuring decision pending review, exactly what Elena said they'd have to do once a fraud allegation was on record. I still hadn't said one word to my family. That came Sunday, at dinner. The kind of ordinary Sunday dinner we'd had 100 times before. My mother's pot roast, my father at the head of the table, Devon scrolling her phone until food arrived. I waited until dessert. I filed a formal complaint at work this week, I said, keeping my voice level. About someone using my badge to access my office in March. About files that disappeared from my computer and reappeared under someone else's name. The room went still. My father set down his fork. Maya, is this really necessary at the table? My mother started. I have the badge logs, I said. I have the file metadata. I have 2 years of campaigns with my name scrubbed off them. I looked at Devon. I have a lot more than I think you realize. Devon's face went through 3 expressions in under 5 seconds. Confusion, calculation, and finally something close to fear, badly disguised as outrage. This is insane, she said. You're accusing me of stealing from you? Over a promotion you didn't even get because your numbers weren't strong enough? My numbers built Riverside Foods, I said quietly. My numbers built Coleman and Pratt. I have the version history to prove it, Devon, down to the timestamp. My mother's hand found Devon's on the table. That single gesture told me everything Elena had warned me about. I think, my father said slowly, looking between all 3 of us, we need to talk about this somewhere that isn't the dinner table. You're right, I said, standing up. Whitfield's legal counsel agrees. There's a meeting scheduled for Wednesday morning. Robert Whitfield is sitting in personally. I watched my mother's face change when she heard the CEO's name. I watched her realize, in real time, that this had already gone further than anything she could manage from a kitchen table. What none of us knew yet, what even Elena didn't know, was that building security still had every frame of that March night on a server nobody had thought to check. Wednesday morning, 9 a.m., Whitfield Marketing Group, 9th floor conference room. Elena sat on my left. Across the table sat Devon, our Division 5P, Whitfield's general counsel, an HR director named Patricia Okafor, and at the head of the table, Robert Whitfield himself. He didn't usually sit in on internal disputes. The fact that he was here told me how seriously legal counsel had taken Elena's preservation letter. Patricia opened with the file metadata, then the badge logs, then the bonus spreadsheet, $61,400 laid out campaign by campaign, with my original draft timestamps next to Devon's submitted versions. Devon's answer was the same one she'd given at the dinner table. I worked on those campaigns too. This is a difference of opinion about credit, not fraud. That's when Robert Whitfield nodded to Patricia, and the screen at the end of the table lit up. It was the footage from March 3rd, 11:40 p.m. Devon, using my badge, walking into my office, sitting at my desk, plugging in a flash drive. 41 seconds of unambiguous, time-stamped video. Nobody in the room spoke for what felt like a full minute. We pulled this after legal flagged the badge anomaly, Robert said, looking at Devon, not at me. I want to be very clear about what I'm seeing. This isn't a disagreement about credit. This is an employee using a colleague's restricted access to remove and resubmit proprietary work product under her own name, multiple times based on what's in front of me. Devon's face had nothing left to perform with. The company's first instinct, true to form, was containment. Legal counsel floated a quiet resolution before lunch, a severance package for Devon with a signed non-disparagement agreement, a backdated correction to my file, and a request that I sign something agreeing not to discuss any of it publicly. Elena said no before the offer finished being explained. My client isn't interested in helping Whitfield manage its exposure quietly, she said. She wants the record corrected formally, in writing, circulated to the same leadership team that watched Devon present stolen work. And she wants the bonus clawback processed through proper channels, not folded into a severance number to make it disappear. They agreed within the hour. They didn't have much leverage left. Devon was terminated for cause that afternoon. The $61,400 in bonuses became a formal repayment obligation tied to her final paycheck and remaining equity. My personnel file was corrected to reflect sole authorship of all 3 campaigns, backdated to their original submission dates. 2 weeks later, I was offered the director title myself, base salary $130,000, the number that had been on the table back in January, before any of this started. I said yes, not because the title mattered the way I once thought it would, but because it was finally, simply true. My parents found out the way most consequences land in families like mine, slowly, and through other people first. My mother called me 11 times in 2 days. I let most of them go to voicemail. When I finally answered, she didn't apologize. She explained. She talked about wanting good things for Devon, about not realizing how far it had gone, about family being family. You knew about the file metadata, Mom, I said quietly. You told her when I'd be out of the office. That's not realizing. She didn't have an answer for that. I didn't cut my parents off completely, but I stopped showing up to be the daughter who clapped politely while someone else got the cake. I started spending Sundays with my grandfather instead, the two of us cooking badly and talking about everything except Whitfield Marketing Group. Devon and I haven't spoken since the termination meeting. I don't know if we ever will, and for the first time in my life, that doesn't feel like something I need to fix. A year later, I stood in the same conference room where Devon once presented my work as her own, presenting a new campaign under my own name, to my own team, with no one looking over my shoulder waiting to take credit. I used to think being seen by my family was the thing I needed most. It turns out, what I needed was simpler than that. I needed the truth on the record. Everything after that, I built myself.